While the world's eyes remain fixated on the loudest voice in the room, on the flashy headlines and theatrical gestures, something far more profound is unfolding, silently, steadily, and powerfully. America has always thrived in the spotlight, speaking in declarations, shaping narratives, leading with volume. But Bharat is not made of noise. Bharat is made of stillness, the kind of stillness that comes after surviving storms, the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full of purpose. Power, you see, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply arrives, like dawn after a long night, quiet but undeniable. The world has been conditioned to equate dominance with drama, to believe that transformation must be televised. But Bharat has taught us that real revolutions often happen off camera, in the hearts of people, in the rebuilding of broken systems, in the silent determination of a billion souls refusing to be overlooked anymore. While America's strength has long rested on its global reach, military might, and economic weight, India's strength is being born in the soil, in the innovation of her youth, in the resilience of her villages, in the quiet confidence of a civilization that has been both wounded and wise. She doesn't need to shout. Because when you know who you are, you don't beg for recognition, you embody it. There is a sacred kind of shift occurring, one that doesn't need permission or applause. It's in the way Indian satellites now touch the stars. It's in the way homegrown entrepreneurs are rewriting global tech. It's in the way farmers still plant seeds with the same hands that once built empires. This shift of power is not dramatic, it's devotional. It's not in your face, it's in your faith. The faith that a nation, long seen as the follower, is now setting the pace. Not with arrogance, but with anchored grace. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this silent shift is that it doesn't seek to replace anyone. It seeks to remind everyone that power isn't about being the loudest, it's about being the truest. And in a world drowning in noise, Bharat is choosing a different language, the language of silence, the language of substance, the language of strength that doesn't tremble because it has already endured, already survived, already risen. The world may not fully understand it yet. They may still mistake quiet for weakness. But soon they'll realize it wasn't silence they were ignoring. It was the heartbeat of a giant awakening. And once Bharat rises, she does not rise to compete. She rises to complete. There was a time, not too long ago, when India waited for acknowledgement, waited for validation, waited for a seat at the table that others built. The West was the compass, the mirror, the standard. Bharat, with all her ancient wisdom and aching wounds, was told to follow, not lead, to listen, not speak, to consume, not create. And so, for decades, she looked outward, hoping to be seen, hoping to be accepted. But something changed, something broke, and in breaking, something sacred was born. India is no longer looking west, because Bharat has remembered who she is. This isn't a rebellion, it's a realization, a quiet but thunderous awakening that we were never meant to walk in someone else's footsteps. We were always meant to blaze our own path. For too long, our brilliance was outsourced, our stories were rewritten, our children were taught to dream in a borrowed language. But today, a new generation of Indians no longer seeks approval. They seek purpose. They're not asking the world for space. They're claiming it. The shift is not loud, but it's visible. You see it when a young girl in a remote village builds an app that changes lives. When an Indian CEO leads a global tech giant not to assimilate, but to innovate. When an ancient philosophy like yoga, once mocked, now becomes the world's medicine. Bharat is no longer waiting to be invited to the conversation. She is the conversation, and that is terrifying to those who built their power on our silence. For centuries, the world taught India to measure herself with foreign rulers and foreign rules. But Bharat has stopped measuring, because now she remembers we are the civilization that gave the world zero and infinity. We are the land where knowledge was not bought or branded. It was offered freely as a gift to humanity. We are not just waking up, we are returning to a self we never truly lost, only temporarily forgot. The need to imitate has vanished. The hunger to impress is gone. Now there is a deeper hunger to serve, to uplift, to lead, not with domination, but with dharma. India's spine is straight, her gaze is steady, and her voice, once drowned by foreign tongues, is beginning to echo across the world, not as an echo of the West, but as a song of her own soul. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. Bharat is not turning her back on the world. She's turning toward herself. And when a nation stops begging to belong and starts becoming who she was always meant to be, the world doesn't lose a follower. It gains a leader. Power has a rhythm. Sometimes it comes like thunder, sudden, loud, and dramatic. Other times it comes like the tide, quiet, constant, reshaping the shore without a single sound. America rose like fire, fierce, fast, and undeniable. Its dominance was immediate, built on explosions, interventions, revolutions, and a fierce will to lead the world. But Bharat doesn't rise like fire. She rises like the earth itself, slow, steady, and eternal. And that's a kind of power the world is not used to recognizing. We live in an age where speed is mistaken for strength, where headlines determine history and noise is mistaken for authority. But not all power rushes in with fanfare. Some of it grows in silence, layer by layer, generation by generation, like a seed pushing through the soil, like a river carving through stone. That's how Bharat is rising, not to shock the world, but to reshape it with quiet force. America's power was born in a moment, but India's power has been centuries in the making. Colonization tried to crush it. Poverty tried to delay it. Global narratives tried to ignore it. But nothing could erase it, because it's not borrowed. It's rooted, and anything rooted deeply into the soul of its people cannot be uprooted by temporary storms. India doesn't rise in reaction. She rises in rhythm, aligned with something greater than political cycles or economic forecasts. She rises in tune with time itself. This isn't a sprint, it's a return to the values that once lit up the world, not with war machines, but with wisdom, not with invasions, but with innovations. Bharat isn't aiming to replace any nation. She's remembering her own reflection. And that is power in its purest form, power that doesn't need to be proven, only lived. When meteors fall, they dazzle for a moment, then disappear. But mountains, they take ages to form, and once they rise, they remain. America may have lit the sky with its speed, but Bharat is rising like a mountain, immovable, unshakable, sacred. Her growth is not to impress, it's to endure. Her journey is not to compete, it's to complete what was left unfinished. So while the world watches for the next big flash, it will be India's steady flame that keeps burning. A flame that doesn't flicker under pressure. A flame that has passed through darkness and still chooses to rise every single morning. That is not the kind of power you fear. It is the kind of power you feel. And once you feel it, you know. This is not a trend. This is a transformation. The world is quietly being rearranged, not with tanks rolling across borders or empires collapsing overnight, but through a subtle, undeniable shift in energy. The old centers of power are growing weary, unsure, and fragmented, while something ancient and unshakable is stirring in the east. The pulse of the future isn't coming from boardrooms in New York or war rooms in Washington. It's rising from the temples of Varanasi, the labs of Bengaluru, the classrooms of Kerala, and the hearts of 1 billion Indians who have waited patiently. But not passively. You won't find it on the front page, but you can feel it in the undercurrent. The alliances that once defined the world are cracking. The dominance of a single narrative, a single worldview, is dissolving. Nations are choosing partnership over patronage, dialogue over dependence. And in that quiet reshaping of relationships, India is no longer the periphery. She is becoming the pivot. Her rise is not just economic, it's emotional, spiritual, and cultural. As the world grows tired of polarization, of endless conflict dressed as diplomacy, it begins to look towards something more grounded, more ancient, more balanced. And what it sees in Bharat is not a new power hungry for control, but an old soul rooted in wisdom, a civilization that once guided the world not with weapons, but with words, not with fear, but with philosophy, not with dominance, but with dharma. In this silent shift of power, it is not about who speaks the loudest, it's about who listens the deepest. And India, shaped by centuries of resilience, colonization, silence, and survival, has learned to listen to herself, to her people, and now to the world. She's not offering a new empire, she's offering a new example, an example of coexistence over conquest, of strength without supremacy, of leadership without loudness. The West may have built the modern world, but the East will teach it how to sustain. And in that mission, India stands at the forefront, not demanding attention, but commanding respect through quiet consistency. While others compete to lead, India is simply becoming the bridge between the divided, becoming the voice for the voiceless, becoming the answer to a world that has grown weary of noise and is now longing for truth. The map is shifting, yes, but it is the mindset that's changing even more. And in that transformation, Bharat isn't just rising, she is reminding the world that true power doesn't divide, it connects. It doesn't conquer, it uplifts. And the new world that is forming will not be built on fear, but on faith. Faith in balance, faith in humanity, faith in Bharat. Strength is not always found in those who conquer. It often lives in those who endure. America has long stood as the symbol of might, its power defined by how loudly it could speak and how quickly it could act. But Bharat has walked a different road, a road marked not by declarations of dominance, but by silent survival. And survival, when done with dignity, becomes the most sacred form of strength. For centuries, India was stripped, silenced, and underestimated. Her people were broken, her wealth was stolen, and her culture was mocked. She was made to feel small, made to believe that her place was beneath, that her wisdom was outdated, that her voice didn't matter. But she did not vanish. She endured. Through the weight of colonization, the scars of partition, the shadows of poverty, and the indifference of a world that only respects the loud, she endured. And in that endurance, she grew roots so deep that no storm could pull her out. While America showcased its power in skyscrapers and missiles, Bharat built hers in classrooms, in farms, in temples, in the homes of mothers who taught their children not just how to survive, but how to rise with grace. It is easy to dominate with weapons. It is far harder to rise after being crushed and still carry compassion in your heart. That is India's true strength, not just in how she stands today, but in how she stood when no one believed she could. Now, as global eyes begin to turn, slowly, reluctantly, toward the east, they begin to realize that this nation they once saw as fragile is anything but. Bharat is not fragile. She is forged. She is not behind. she is becoming. And this strength she carries is not reactive, it is reflective. She doesn't rise to prove others wrong. She rises because it is finally time to be right with herself. This is the power of a people who have known pain yet chosen peace, who have been silenced yet chosen speech, who have been hurt yet chosen healing. The world may call that weakness, but it is the highest form of strength. To rise without rage, to move forward without forgetting, to lead without the need to crush. India is not asking for a place. She is creating one that doesn't mirror the West but mirrors her own soul. She is not in a race to dominate. She is on a mission to restore, and that kind of power, quiet, patient, purposeful, doesn't flicker, it shines. Not for a moment, but for generations. This moment in history isn't just a political transition or a change in global rankings. It is something far deeper. The shift we are witnessing is not merely of power, it is of purpose. It is not just economic or military or strategic, it is spiritual. For too long, the world has chased power as conquest. It has glorified domination, equated aggression with leadership, and mistaken control for progress. But that old script is wearing thin. The world is exhausted, not just from war or conflict, but from a soul-level hunger for meaning, for balance, for something real. And in that silence, a new voice is rising, not to shout over the noise, but to bring it into stillness. That voice is Bharat. Bharat does not rise to mimic the old powers. She rises to remember who she has always been. A civilization older than history, deeper than maps, richer than gold. Where Dharma was not just a word, but a way of life. Where kings were taught to serve, not rule. Where the measure of greatness was not in what you conquered, but in what you uplifted. And that essence, long buried under colonization, modernity, and the world's dismissive gaze, is returning. America built its strength in the age of machines. Bharat is rising in the age of meaning. The world no longer needs louder leaders. It needs wiser ones. The future will not belong to those who scream the most, but to those who carry stillness with strength. And Bharat, with her silent steps and steady heart, is offering not dominance, but direction, a new kind of leadership, not born in boardrooms or battlegrounds, but in balance. Balance between mind and soul, between innovation and introspection, between progress and peace. This is a spiritual shift because it calls humanity back to itself. It is not about East versus West. It is about real versus hollow. And what Bharat brings is not just policies or technology, but presence. A presence that has learned to bow before it leads, to listen before it speaks, to forgive before it fights. That is not weakness. That is wisdom earned over thousands of years. And so, when we speak of India's rise, let us not reduce it to charts and statistics. Let us see it for what it truly is. A remembering of a time when the world did not fear the strong, because the strong did not seek to be feared. Bharat's rise is not a challenge to the world, it is an invitation to lead differently, to live deeper, to build a world not of control, but of connection.